Good day, everybody. Good day, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is for you. I'm Jacy. This is episode 2 of Truths of a Madman. And today I think I'm going to be talking, at least I'm going to start with a subject that is very close to me because I've spent my whole life, basically, at least my adult life, doing this. I was going to make some comparisons, some parallels, if you will, at least how I see it. If you didn't watch the first episode of Truth of Madman, go check it out. I'll put it in at the end there for you to go to, or in the description. But I kind of let you guys know in that one. I'll just go over it again in this one. I'm not by any means a professional scholar or educated in politics, or basically I have a high school education. I went to a trade school, but so I guess why I'm telling you this is I'm where I'm coming from is just my thoughts, my opinions. It's raw. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna sugarcoat anything. I'm just gonna tell it how it is. Or I should say that again. I'm not gonna tell it how it is exactly. I'm gonna tell it how I see it. So I might say some things that are kind of whatever, off the wall, or things that to be not exactly true. But what I am going to do is I'm going to come from the heart and tell you guys how I feel and how I see it from my experiences in life. So that being said, just take all of this with a grain of salt, and if you have any comments, leave them definitely for me. I'll read it all, and I'll try to answer you guys. And if you're going to be negative, at least make it constructive, I guess. All right, so now that that's out of the way, first thing I wanted to talk about is work under capitalism. So just to let you guys know, I am an anti-capitalist. The way forward I see is a socialist economy. I see humans need to get rid of that wealth inequality that capitalism creates every time. It doesn't matter if people try to keep that from happening. The system itself is just going to create that time and time again. So it needs to just be torn down, rebuilt with something better. So now that you know that about me, what I'm going to talk about to start with is I'm going to make some comparisons, some parallels to work and slavery. Okay. So, I've never obviously been a slave. In this country, slavery has been abolished. It took a lot of fighting and a lot of protests and a lot of people going through hard things to get to where we're at now. So I don't want to undermine that or make it sound, less than what it is. I know the leaps and bounds we've come to this point, and obviously I just know what I've learned from history. I know what I've seen in my life, the segregation of certain races, and it's going on to this very day because of the American exceptionalism that we've been kind of brainwashed with from the beginning of our from the beginning, from the forefathers, from how we developed America, how we saw ourselves, what we did to the Native Americans, and so on and so forth. So that being said, I want to compare work to slavery because to me there's some pretty significant parallels, and let me explain. So obviously in capitalism, you own a business, you're the owner class, right? You decide what you want to produce, you decide how that's going to be produced, you supply the materials and everything else that needs to be done for that business to to produce whatever it is you're producing, a product or a service, basically. So if you're the owner class, you're not going to do everything by yourself. I guess if you're a new business and you're just starting out and it's just your business, you're going to be doing both, right? You're going to be doing the you're going to be the owner and you're going to be the worker. But if you have a business where you can hire some employees, you're going to have those workers. Okay. So then there's going to be that employer-employee relationship. And in capitalism, the employees, unless the owner wants to give them more rights, they don't have a say in how the business is run. They just do the work that they do to produce the product that they, the goods or services that they produce, and the owner gets the profit from that, and then the owner pays the employee whatever they decide upon, right? So it's an agreement. You sign this agreement when you get hired at any place. I'm sure you guys know all this stuff, but I'm just kind of breaking it down because the parallel I want to draw here is, especially in big business, how it's like someplace like Walmart or McDonald's, or you name it. There's tons of them out there, and they Starbucks, so they've gotten so big and so disconnected from employees that they just kind of control everything from their place, the CEO and the shareholders, and they make decisions that affect all of these employees' lives. And most of the time, I hate to say it's negatively, because the employee does not get any choice in the matter when something changes, when they cut full-time hours and hire more people just to work part-time hours so that they don't have to give medical benefits or dental or paid vacations, those types of things. And so they make these cuts to make employees' lives worse, and to give their, to raise their profits, basically. So big businesses, they all do this, some worse than others. And it's awful. It's exploiting the workers. The workers are the ones that, in my opinion, should get the most of the share of the profits of the money, because they're producing the product. Without the workers, the business couldn't run. I understand that the employer class, the owner class, they supply everything you need to do the work, but after that, they're not doing anything. They're not producing anything. They're not adding to society in any way. The workers are doing everything at that point. So the workers should get a whole lot more than they get. And if that was the case, it was more equal and fair, and the workers get what they deserve, right? Then everybody, it seems to me, would have a better quality of life, have more money to go on vacation, in this country. Obviously, medical is like a business, and education is a business. So it costs tons of ridiculous amounts of money for those human needs, at least the medical part. And education, I would say, is a human need as well. If you want to be educated, those things shouldn't be businesses. They should be public services, right? But I'm getting off on a tangent a bit, but so that's what I'm saying. It's super messed up. Most people have jobs that they need to just survive. They don't want to do this work, so they're being forced every day going to a job that they don't even want to do. They're spending, big chunk of their life doing something they don't want to do, and they're not even getting paid enough to survive, to live. Okay, so I'm saying all this because now look at the parallel. Okay, so slavery, there's a slaver, the slave owner, right, and the slave. So now employer or business owner and employee. Get it? So I guess what I'm saying is, like, I realize that it's not a exact parallel, because when you work a job, you're you don't have to work the job, but you kind of do, because your choices are usually work a job I don't want to work, or starve and be homeless, right? So I mean, I'm sure that nobody in the world wants to be starving or homeless, so they're gonna go work the job. So in a sense, yeah, they're a slave to that job, and yeah, they get to get off work and go home and do whatever they want to do, really. But it's can't really disconnect from a job exactly, because you got to wind down from the job, and you got to think maybe about what went on that day. If something kind of sucks, or your manager yelled at you, or so you're bringing the job home with you. And then even in slavery, the slaves get some time off from laboring as a slave. Yeah, they don't get paid for it, so that's the difference. I mean, I guess you get paid from a job, but most jobs, people are not getting paid, like I said earlier, not even what they should be for doing giving most of the value to society, producing the goods or services. So in capitalism, that's the way it thrives. There's capitalism always has to grow. There always has to be a profit, and when there always has to be growth and profit, um, there there's gonna be, it has to come from somewhere, right? It has to be, it has to exploit something, and 9 times out of 10, it exploits the workers. So the big CEOs of companies, they get paid. Shoot, I forget I'm gonna probably say it wrong, but they get paid, 7, 10 times, whatever it is. They get paid a whole ton more than the workers do, and for what? For nothing. For sitting down and making some rules, and going to play golf, and contributing really not much to society, and getting paid extreme amounts more than the people that are actually producing. So to me, slavery and slave and slave owner, and owner of a company and employee, it's pretty similar. Obviously there's huge differences. You can't employers can't beat up their employees. There's rules and regulations, and yeah, we have a choice. Get another job if you don't like your job. I get it, but like, most people can't even do that, because it'd lose their little flat that they rent for too much money, and and will starve to death and can't even find a better job, and so on and so forth. So it's just an awful situation. Capitalism creates it. It exploits workers. It's always going to do that. There's always going to be a huge gap between the wealth inequality between the owner and the workers. and it's always going to grow more and more because there always has to be a profit. Capitalism sucks from our earth has finite resources, and it takes and takes and takes, and it can only take so much until it's gonna break, right? So that's why I think it's inevitable that we're gonna go into a socialist system, because definitely nothing's perfect, but socialism, it it would make things a lot more fair. It would get rid of that wealth inequality. It would create all kinds of social services for people that need it. Like health, dental, uh, democracy in the workplace, so that there's no more shareholders. There's no more employer class, owner class that makes all the rules. The employees own it as a collective. They make the decisions on what to produce, when to produce, how to produce. Work hours would be a lot less, because you could get everything produced that you need to in a certain amount of time, and probably never have to work 40-hour weeks and 8-hour days, and never have vacations, and everybody would have a lot more money to be able to go on trips with their family and spend more time with their family, develop hobbies and relationships and things that humans need to thrive as humans. So that's kind of the gist of what I wanted to say. I mean, I didn't want to, this is unscripted and kind of a raw podcast, so I really don't want to go into, at this point anyway, I don't want to go into researching a bunch of things and giving you a bunch of data and historical facts and records and all these sorts of things. I mean, there might be times where I do that, but I just kind of wanted to talk about this parallel that I've seen. And like I said, I'm a white guy, 47 years old, white male in America. But I've woken up. I mean, I can never say that I would know what it's like to be a different race that has experienced bigotry and things. So I've seen it, and it's awful. And I want all of this to change. I want humans to be better to each other. So I mean, I guess I'm saying that because making this kind of comparison by this white guy over here is kind of silly. I get it, but I just wanted to kind of tell you guys how I see this subject, and how I've seen it. But what I can say, coming from experience for, I would say almost 30 years of working, is I do have a lot of experience in employee-employer relationships, and that's that feeling of isolation you get over time, and feeling like you're a slave to the grind of work, and you're not getting anything for it, really. I mean, you're just enough to survive, and sometimes it doesn't even seem like that. So that I can say from experience. So I think where I wanted to go from this point is there's a channel I love from it's a socialist guy, Jacy. The channel's called Second Thought, and I was gonna watch this and kind of react to this video he made about work and kind of work. I think it's called Working Under Capitalism. And then I wanted to maybe talk a bit about the video after we watch it. I might interrupt in between if there's a good point or something I wanted to talk about. So anyway, what do you guys say? Let's watch this video by Second Thought is the channel, and I'll put the link in the description of this video.
If you're unemployed, it isn't because there's no work. There is and always will be work to be done. What we don't always have is jobs. Let's back up a little bit. In this episode, we're looking at a uniquely capitalist failure: meaningless jobs and the unemployed masses. We'll unpack.
All right, so just want to say real quick, just because I was talking about that for a bit there, is the meaningless job part. That's part of what makes us feel like slaves, is because if you feel like you're doing a job that's meaningless, you're not going to get any fulfillment out of that job, right? So anyway, here we go.
Both of these phenomena and the different elements of a capitalist economy that shape our relationship to work. Every economic system to date has had its problems. Only under capitalism, however, has finding meaningful and useful work been an issue. It is a uniquely modern problem for an economy to be structured so that hundreds of thousands of people are without a meaningful job, and at the same time, hundreds of thousands have their most basic human needs going unmet.
That's awful.
Our modern society is the only one in which people...
Here, let's look at this. 30% increase in unsheltered homes. 209,000 individuals not living in families with children were unsheltered in 2020. Damn, that is awful. Food insecurity. Oh my gosh. Okay, so let's go.
People are both going without food and shelter, and it is actively disincentivized to organize things in a way that would help them. All of us can look around at our communities, our cities, our country, and see that there are things that need to be done, that there are issues we can all agree upon and want to see resolved. But we all know that there is only so much we can do as individuals. Whether it's because we work long hours and need time to rest, because we're unemployed and need to actively look for a job, or because we're in a precarious situation ourselves, most of us have barely enough time and energy, if any at all, to feed the hungry, house the homeless, or generally better our lives and those of the people around us. Many of...
Right? It's scary, man. It's a scary feeling. And the worst part of it is, it's like the vast majority, at least, of Americans that are in this situation, you know?
Us work jobs that feel completely devoid of meaning, that seem to help no one. And we still can't spend our time in more meaningful ways because we too need a steady wage to keep a roof over our head and food on our table. We are trapped, and it seems nearly impossible to get out. In the midst of all this, finding a decent job has become incredibly difficult. Long gone are the days of walking into a bank, asking to see the manager, and starting at a desk the same day. Industrial jobs have steadily declined for decades, and even the relative security of a college education has waned as more graduates go into low-wage or even unpaid entry-level jobs.
Isn't that awful? So imagine this. Think about this. You go to a college and get into debt, and sometimes you get into major debt. Depending on what you did and what you went to college for and what college you went to, you know, all that. But so you go to school for minimum 4 years, right? You get into debt. Then when you get out of college, you're not guaranteed any kind of job in that field that you got educated in. And so you end up having to get some kind of a part-time job being a slave for a big business, and you're in debt. So how desperate that is, man. Only under capitalism.
There is little hope that this generation will achieve the financial stability of our parents. And for those who entered the job market at the height of the pandemic particularly, employment has been lagging far behind expected levels. So how did we get here? 3 different elements of capitalist society play into our current relationship with work: the profit motive, capitalism's purposeful misallocation of labor, and the crises that are built into the system's proper function. Let's start with the profit motive. At the heart of our current crisis is the fact that the profit motive, the feature that capitalists have told us makes capitalism so efficient, does a terrible job at properly allocating for human needs. Capitalists frame it like this: if you are incentivized to make profits, and the only way you can do that is by providing something that somebody else needs, a service or a product, self-interest will naturally transform into common good. Reality, however, turns out very differently. Not only can profit be generated in entirely speculative ways that don't benefit anybody, think cryptocurrency traders,
Yeah.
but in just about every sector of the economy, the profit motive does more to pervert the common good than enhance it. In the pursuit of higher profits, companies will destroy brand new items.
Can you believe that, man? That is totally true. The worst thing is food. They'll destroy perfectly good food because they can't get a profit out of it because for whatever reason, the food is maybe a little bit getting close to the date, and so they'll just throw it in the garbage because they'd rather throw it away than give it to somebody that can sell it or actually use it to lose a profit. I mean, it makes zero sense and it's awful.
Build flaws into their product so they'll become obsolete faster.
Oh yeah, and there's that too. I'm sorry I keep stopping this, but there's so many good points in this. That's another thing that businesses will do, companies will do. They'll purposely make their product not as good as it could be so that it doesn't last as long, so that people have to buy more, so that they continue to make that profit grow.
Throw away perfectly good food.
There you go.
As a direct result of the profit motive, our planet is increasingly polluted and we live progressively more wasteful lives. But the market of goods isn't the only place capitalism's incentives don't work in our favor. When work enters into the equation, we see the same thing happen. The endless search for profits leads people at the very top of our society to make far more than they could ever need or spend.
Yeah.
At the bottom forms a vast chasm of crushing poverty. And it all starts at hiring. In the hiring process, the profit motive consistently leads the managerial class to offer lower wages, worse benefits, longer hours, and more dangerous working conditions to potential employees so that they can be the tiniest bit more profitable and gain a sliver of an edge over the competition.
Can you believe that? And it's totally true. I mean, like I was saying earlier, maybe there's small businesses that don't do this as bad, but how exploitive that is, if I'm saying that right, to workers, man, just to continue to make a profit. I mean, that profit motive becomes more important than humans.
Workers face a similar dilemma, offering to be paid the minimum they can afford if it means they can guarantee getting a salary over the next person. Thanks to the profit motive, it is in the interest of the company to hire the fewest people, give them the least amount of money, and work them as much as possible to extract every last penny the competition isn't extracting themselves. But at the same time, the profit motive leads companies to offer jobs that are increasingly meaningless, but very profitable to shareholders. We'll get to that in a second. But first, let's look at the flip side of the coin, unemployment. While the profit motive can explain part of the equation, our lack of jobs is explained by another feature of the capitalist economy. For a capitalist system to function, it is absolutely essential for some people to be unemployed. This is called the natural rate of unemployment, and it is one of the foundational elements.
So, you hear that? It's unemployment is a necessity for capitalism to keep working properly, so that they even have a name for the unemployment amount, because it's like they create it, you know what I mean? So, oh man, oops.
Of our 21st century stage of capitalism. For companies to consistently push wages down in a capitalist economy, thereby increasing their profits, staying competitive, and retaining complete control over labor, two things must be guaranteed. One, there must be an available pool of desperate workers to pull from. There needs to be that segment of people experiencing not only unemployment and the heavy mental burden that comes with it, but also dire need so that an otherwise unappealing job gets filled. Hence the reason capitalists are so staunchly against sensible welfare provisions. So long as people are desperate enough, capitalists can cycle them in and out of jobs that barely allow them to maintain an acceptable standard of living. Two,
Sick.
and intimately tied with the first point, firing workers must be as easy as possible. Having a mass of unemployed, ready-to-work people available helps. But so does knocking down the barriers put up by unionized labor and government regulations, so the threat of unemployment becomes more tangible.
Capitalists love that.
Were this not the case, profits would not be maximized for the capitalist class and their version of efficiency, slowly pushing them out of the market in favor of their more ruthless competitors. The quest to maximize profit therefore naturally pushes people into unemployment and artificially creates a scarcity of jobs. In other words, in order for the system to work properly, there must always be a reserve army of labor, a section of the population unemployed and actively worse off.
Man.
In theory, economists estimate this to be around 5% of the workforce, a percentage of people who are unemployed but only for a short time. In reality, unemployment is maintained at a much higher rate and includes far more people in both longer-term and more dire unemployment. Otherwise, hiring stops being quite so flexible and profitable for the owner class. This fact makes capitalism pretty unappealing.
It's like treating humans like cattle, basically.
No society should only survive off the backs of underpaid workers and a steady flow of the desperately unemployed who face homelessness. But it doesn't end there. The profit motive and the overall organization of our economy pervert the notion of jobs entirely. Specifically, useful jobs are made unrewarding, while useless jobs become lucrative. This is David Graeber's thesis. Graeber was an anthropologist most well known for his 2018 book Bullshit Jobs. In this book, Graeber observes something we all know to be true. Some jobs exist solely to make the rich more money and to keep us working. Contrary to what we've long been told, that as technology improves, automation will ease our work week to fewer and fewer hours so we can more completely enjoy our lives away from the necessary labor required to maintain it, our capitalist society has tightened its grip on exploitation for exploitation's sake. Instead of phasing out human labor as more and more jobs become obsolete, allowing us to reap the benefits of an advanced economy where humans don't need to perform all essential labor, the quest for profit has created new jobs that serve entirely to boost numbers on a computer screen, accumulate the wealth and power of a greedy few, and keep the masses locked into jobs that alienate us and exhaust us too much to fight for meaningful change. Despite a decline in farming and industry jobs, we produce enough to cover far more basic needs and general goods than we could ever require. So where did the jobs go? According to Graeber, jobs became meaningless. In a complete reversal of capitalist theory, where jobs should disappear as they become unnecessary, useless jobs have become a fixture of our modern economy. We work for work's sake. The numbers are on Graeber's side. In a poll of the British workforce, a full 37% of those surveyed felt their jobs were meaningless, and an additional 13% didn't know if their jobs made any meaningful contribution to the world. That's 50% of jobs. Half of jobs are deemed by those who do them to be pointless. Paradoxically, these are often the white-collar, highly valued, and most lucrative jobs that fall into this unfulfilling dead end. These are not the essential workers spotlighted by the pandemic, whom we all saw are foundational to our survival. It's not the minimum wage workers who work meaningless jobs. Instead, a capitalist system that pursues growth for growth's sake and drags us along, forcing countless workers into aimless employment with the threat of starvation, creates a landscape of pointless labor that serves only to keep the machine running smoothly for the benefit of those at the controls. The masses work not for the common good, but to accrue financial capital for the disproportionately small ruling minority. If things were different, if we did cast off these pointless jobs that might as well not exist, our entire system would come undone. Homelessness, the 40-hour workweek, minimum wage jobs, none of it would be justifiable if we eliminated our attachment to the profit motive, the delusion of infinite growth, and the ridiculous idea that we all need to put more than half our waking hours into a job regardless of its necessity so that we can simply pay for our miserable existence.
It's so
At this
true,
point,
man.
we should acknowledge that there is currently a labor shortage in minimum wage, particularly restaurant jobs. The reality of this situation, however, is not born out of any real shortage of people looking for a job, or the existence of too strong a social safety net, or a sudden lack of need for restaurants. People are realizing that when corporate lawyers make hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars a year protecting multi-billion-dollar companies from the repercussions of their harmful cost-cutting, offering the bare minimum poverty wage of $7.25 an hour, not providing benefits or flexibility for an appropriate work-life balance, or even a safe work environment for a necessary job is not going to get people lining up to work for you. Ultimately, the combination of a job market that actively pushes people into unemployment or meaningless jobs, kicks wages down to the lowest possible rung, and makes it unprofitable to provide for the needy despite our ability and desire to do so, creates an infinite cycle of worsening conditions. A more thinly stretched economy justifies austerity measures for out-of-touch governments. It continues to concentrate wealth at the top, and it makes it even easier for a greater degree of exploitation to be forced upon the working masses. Here we get to the final piece of the puzzle, the regular destabilization of capitalism. Every few years, in recent decades, about every 5 to 10 years on average, the entire economy crashes and enters a recession or depression. Huge.
Yeah, so totally true. It does. I mean, we've seen it several times. 2008, the pandemic, to name a few, crashes. But I would say that I wouldn't even call it a crash. You know what I mean? Because a crash would indicate something that usually works, just breaking down, right? But I would say it's just a normal part of capitalism, because it's part of something that doesn't ever work from the beginning. It's only there to siphon from people all the way to the top, and it's there to exploit. So it should just not exist anymore, right? Ran its course, needs to go away. So that's just my opinion.
Portions of the population lose their jobs, the banks are bailed out, and after much suffering, mostly by the poor, things return to a new normal within a couple of years. Now just a little bit more fragile and a little bit more unequal. These crises, like the inaccurate rating of subprime mortgages in 2008 or the start of the pandemic in 2020, far from being the unexpected product of random happenings across the world, are a structural feature of a capitalist economy.
See?
And this is not a new idea. Non-capitalist economists anticipated the fragility of capitalism over 100 years ago.
Yeah.
As Marx observed,
Karl Marx.
and has been proven right time and time again as economic crises occur and continue to multiply, capitalism has
Amazon.
a natural tendency to fall into crises as a result of what he called the falling rate of profit. Because capitalism naturally creates monopolies and the concentration of wealth into fewer and fewer hands, the rate of returns on investments continually falls. Over time, this problem balloons until investing money is less and less useful, stagnating an economy that needs to grow endlessly to survive.
Yeah.
Inevitably.
Yeah, because profit can only continue to get bigger and bigger until it stagnates. And then what? Because capitalism has to continue to grow, and if it stagnates, there's a problem that can't be fixed eventually. You know, I mean, they'll keep trying to find ways to keep it alive and exploit usually the workers, but eventually there's going to be nothing else to exploit, right? So
Crashing it and dragging countless millions of human beings into precarity. Long-term sustainability is sacrificed at the cost of a fragile but functioning economy, liable to collapse at any moment. And when it does, it isn't capital that suffers, it's labor.
people.
Regular people end up without a job and without a safety net. The point of this video is not that we should do what
Experiencing
every
homelessness,
president
man.
has promised since the beginning and create more jobs.
Fuck
As
those
we've
guys.
seen,
I'm sorry.
more jobs don't always make things better if those jobs are pointless, alienating, dangerous, or demeaning. What we need is to better recognize the role jobs are meant to play and make them reflect that role more accurately. Jobs should not just be a way to make money, for ourselves or for the executives. Work, whether it's within the framework of a job or not, should be conducted with the express purpose of improving the human condition, at
Yes.
both the individual and societal level. This is clearly not what wage-based labor accomplishes. Think of how many different things we could achieve if we committed our labor to our needs. We could improve our infrastructure in long-sighted and sustainable ways,
Hell yeah.
build up our green energy capacity,
Hell yeah.
increase the amount of available housing, Focus on our
Yes.
local agriculture. Make
Yes, yes.
tangible, positive changes. These projects are rarely profitable, and that's why we don't see them today. Despite wage labor being at the center of a capitalist economy, it is neither natural nor eternal, and as we've seen, it makes people infinitely exploitable. It
Yep.
is not to be desired. Every socialist, at some point or another, has arrived or will arrive at this conclusion and argue that it is this unfair exchange, this contradiction between those who hire and those who sell their labor, that is at the core of our biggest societal challenges. Seen through this lens, work is not simply an economic practice, it is a political act. As people who want a better future, whether you consider yourself socialist yet or not, it is therefore our goal to politicize work in a more just way, whether that's
Yeah.
through co-ops, unionization, or direct democratic control.
Oh, yeah,
Countless
that's
theories on
perfect.
work, compensation, and political economy have been devised by socialist thinkers over the years. But at the end of the day, the vision of labor that most settle on looks something like this. Work is an essential facet of life. However, it is far from being what life is about. The purpose of human life is not to toil endlessly. Living can be so much more. It is a myriad of things, from enjoying or creating art or good food, to forming meaningful relationships or bettering oneself.
Oh, yeah,
Work
dude.
only facilitates that. And while labor can and should include some of these pleasures, fundamentally, work is only how we guarantee our ability to experience life. Under our current system, work doesn't have this role. It serves to generate profit, and since there is no natural cap to how much profit is desirable, neither is there a cap to how much work is deemed necessary. We are
Very.
made to work more and more. The truth is that we can achieve all the necessary and even luxurious outcomes of work with far fewer hours, far fewer years of our lives, and far better conditions. The only reason that we don't is that a profit-based economy simply does not function that way. In a
Yeah.
world of prosperity, we have been made to endlessly toil for the benefit of tyrants, for people we will never meet, and often whose names we do not even know. In order to build the future we deserve, we must dismantle the system that abuses work. This
Okay, so 100% agree with that. Like I was saying before, capitalism is never going to be able to be made better somehow or reformed, you know. I mean, plenty of politicians in America at least have suggested reforms to try to make some of the exploitation and corruptness better or go away or however you want to put that. But reforming it is just going to put a Band-Aid on it, and it's eventually the wound is going to open again and just get worse and worse and worse. So there's no reforming capitalism. There's only destroying, tearing down, removing, building something new and better for humans, for humanity, and for the earth's sake.
most fundamental of human endeavors. If you'd like to get a glimpse of what jobs could look like in the coming decades, I highly recommend you check out Work of the Future on CuriosityStream. It's a fascinating look at how technology can be used to help free humanity from menial labor and reinvigorate innovative and meaningful work.
All right, so I think that's it for this. Let me switch over here. All right, you guys, man. I love this channel, Second Thought. Like I said, I'll put a link to the channel in the description. If you haven't heard of it, definitely go check it out. There's a ton of good content on there. He is a socialist, like I said, but there's plenty of content for all kinds of different subjects that have to do with anti-capitalism and how things could be better, how bad and exploitive capitalism is. So definitely go check out that channel. But usually I want to, well, maybe I'll just do it a little bit. I mean, I really didn't plan much of a talk about, how things could get better. Obviously, I believe socialism, a socialist economy is going to inevitably happen just because capitalism can only go so far. And I think it's almost on the ropes, regardless of what anybody does. So I just, I don't want the transition to be horrible. So we need to plan ahead. And I really feel that AI and robotics are coming at a crossroads, a time in history that it's super important, and they're gifts. We just cannot let businesses and capitalists privatize it and deregulate it so that it just becomes worse and quicker of a decline and a wealth inequality, so don't let that happen. I really don't think it will, because AI is one of those technologies that there's plenty of people that have open source software that are working on this stuff. So I think it's beyond control for capitalists at this time. So I just believe that AI and robotics are coming at this perfect time in history that are going to make the transition into the future better, quicker, and safer for us, and the transition into the post-labor economy. And I believe, I know there's plenty of people that believe capitalism can exist in the post-labor economy. I don't agree at all. I think it would just do the same thing. It would exploit and cause worse inequality and worse living conditions for most people, just on a quicker level, if capitalism exists in our post-labor economy. So I just believe the way forward is socialism at this point, with AI and robotics together, and collectives and everybody working together in a socialist economy. I believe going forward, our future, it looks so bright, and we're going to have some amazing things, and people who have been struggling for their whole lives are going to be able to enjoy life like never before. Be able to travel, be able to develop relationships, make new hobbies, work on things that they've always wanted to work on. So, I just wanted to end on that positive note. I know a lot of this can be negative in a sense, but what I want is for people to wake up. I want us to push back against the system, break it down, get together, everybody, and let's make a better world for humans, okay? Together. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you on the next one, okay? It'll be episode number 3 next time. Not sure exactly when. I don't have an exact plan for when these come out, but look for it in the future. Have a good afternoon, good evening, you guys. We'll see you next time. Peace.